I never expected my marriage to collapse in such a humiliating way. If someone had told me a year ago that I'd be standing in my own living room, listening to my wife tell me she was going on a date like it was the most normal thing in the world, I would have called them insane. But here I was, and she was smirking. That's what got to me the most. Not just the words, not the absurdity of the situation. The smirk, that tiny, arrogant upturn of her lips, as if she were waiting to see my reaction, as if she had already decided exactly how this conversation was going to play out. I could feel my heartbeat in my throat. The walls of our home, the place where we built our life together, felt like they were closing in on me. I don't even remember what I was doing before she said it. Maybe I was sitting on the couch, scrolling absent-mindedly on my phone. Maybe I was cleaning up the kitchen after dinner. It doesn't matter, because the moment she said it, everything else ceased to exist. I turned to look at her, and for a split second, I thought she was joking. I mean, she had to be, right? What kind of wife looks her husband in the eyes and casually announces she's going on a date? But there was no laughter in her voice. No trace of guilt. Just that smirk. The setup for disaster. Excuse me, I finally said, my voice coming out a little weaker than I wanted. Renee sighed, like she was explaining something obvious to a child. I'm going out tonight. With someone. She adjusted one of her earrings in the mirror by the doorway, admiring herself like she had no care in the world. I figured I'd be upfront about it. I don't want any drama. She said it so casually, so effortlessly. And yet, inside me, something snapped. This wasn't just a betrayal. It was a humiliation. My wife, the woman I built a life with, the woman I trusted, the woman who used to look at me like I was her entire world, was standing there, telling me to just accept that she was going on a date. Not an affair behind my back. Not some deep, shameful secret she couldn't contain anymore. She was rubbing it in my face. And the worst part? She expected me to sit there and take it. The cold, hard realization. I don't know how long I stood there, just staring at her, my thoughts racing at 100 miles per hour. My mind tried to piece together when this all started. Had I missed the signs? Was it the way she had been dressing up more lately? The nights she came home late, claiming she had been out with friends? The sudden distance between us, like she had already checked out of our marriage long before tonight? I felt sick. This wasn't some random mistake, some lapse in judgment she was confessing to with regret. This was deliberate. She had made her choice. And suddenly, I realized something. She had already decided how I was going to react. She expected me to plead, to argue, to break down. She wanted to see me fight for her, to give her some dramatic, passionate scene that she could use to justify whatever twisted logic had led her here. I could see it in her eyes. She wanted me to lose my composure. And that's when I knew exactly what I was going to do. I swallowed back the lump in my throat, steadied my voice, and gave her a look as calm as I could manage. Have fun, I said. Her smirk faltered. She wasn't expecting that. And that was just the beginning. Renee's smirk wavered just slightly, but she quickly recovered. I could tell she wasn't expecting my reaction. Maybe she had imagined me stammering, asking who it was, begging her to reconsider. Maybe she had envisioned me exploding in anger, demanding an explanation. But I did none of that. I simply stood there, letting her words hang in the air like a bad smell. She adjusted the strap of her dress and picked up her purse, hesitating just a fraction of a second before flipping her hair over her shoulder. I'll be back late, she said, testing me, waiting for some kind of response. I just nodded. Okay. That was it. She gave me one last look before walking out the door, and as soon as I heard the lock click behind her, I let out a breath I didn't realize I had been holding. My hands were shaking. My stomach churned with something between nausea and disbelief. I walked to the kitchen, poured myself a glass of water, and tried to process what had just happened. My wife had just left for a date, and she told me to my face. For the past 10 years, I had been the type of husband who believed in compromise, in trust, in patience. When we argued, I was the one who took a deep breath and found a way to calm things down. I never raised my voice. I never played mind games. And I never, ever thought I'd be in a situation like this. I stared at my reflection in the dark kitchen window. Who was this man looking back at me? A fool? A coward? No, I wasn't going to be that. I wasn't going to let her turn me into that. I sat down at the table, my mind racing. There was no way this was something that just started out of nowhere. Renee had been distant for months, and I had made excuses for it. Maybe she was stressed. Maybe work was overwhelming. Maybe we had just fallen into a routine, and I needed to plan more date nights, be more attentive. I had been fooling myself. I needed answers. I grabbed my phone and scrolled through my messages with her. Nothing suspicious, but that didn't mean much. I opened our shared bank account, checking recent transactions. A few dinners charged to her card at restaurants I didn't recognize. A hotel. My stomach tightened. I wasn't just dealing with an emotional betrayal. This was a full betrayal. I tapped on my screen, pulling up the tracking app we had installed years ago when she started going on late-night jogs. She had forgotten all about it. I watched as the small dot moved across the map. She wasn't at a restaurant. She was at his house. A residential neighborhood on the other side of town, nowhere near any of her usual hangouts. My grip on the phone tightened. I had two choices. I could sit here like an idiot and pretend none of this was happening. Or I could do something. I stood up. I wasn't going to let her humiliate me in my own marriage. But I wasn't going to give her the reaction she wanted either. I had a better plan. I sat there for a long time, staring at the little dot on my phone screen. I knew exactly where she was, but the question running through my head wasn't where. It was why. Not why she was cheating, that was already obvious. But why she thought she could do it this way. Why she thought she could look me in the eyes, smirk, and tell me to my face that she was going on a date like it was something I should just accept. Like I was some irrelevant background character in my own life, someone to be dismissed, humiliated, and left behind without a second thought. The more I thought about it, the more something inside me shifted. I wasn't sad anymore. I wasn't even angry in the way I expected to be. What I felt was clarity, something I hadn't felt in a long time. I glanced around the house, the living room, the pictures on the walls, the furniture we picked out together. It all felt like a lie now. This house wasn't a home. It was just a place where I had been convenient, where I had existed while my wife planned her double life. I stood up, rolling my shoulders like I was shaking something off. If she thought she was in control of this, she was wrong. She might have thought she could script this situation, but she underestimated one thing. I wasn't going to play the role she assigned to me. Instead of sitting there feeling sorry for myself, I went upstairs to our bedroom and opened the closet. My side was neat, organized. Hers was a mess, clothes stuffed into corners, designer bags stacked on top of each other. I pulled down one of them and unzipped it. Sure enough, receipts, hotel stays, dinners, even an airline ticket stub from a trip she never told me about. It was all right there. She hadn't even bothered to hide it properly. That told me something. This wasn't an affair born out of guilt, out of some emotional crisis. This was calculated. And that meant she had a plan, one that I wasn't supposed to know about. But now I did. I walked downstairs, grabbed a trash bag, and started pulling her things off the hangers. If she wanted to play games, she could play them somewhere else. I wasn't going to be the husband sitting at home, waiting for his wife to come back from her date like nothing had happened. I tossed her makeup bag inside the trash bag. Her shoes. A few of the dresses I knew she had worn on those nights out. It wasn't about revenge, it was about making a statement. I wasn't a doormat. As I was tying the bag shut, I heard the front door. She was back. I glanced at the time. Barely 2 hours had passed. That was fast. Maybe things hadn't gone the way she planned. Maybe she expected to come home to a broken man. Well, she was about to be disappointed. I stepped into the hallway just as she entered, tossing her keys on the table like she didn't have a care in the world. She was still wearing that smug expression until she saw the trash bag in my hand. Her smile faltered. "What are you doing?" I shrugged. "Packing up some of your stuff." She blinked. It took a second for her brain to process what she was seeing. "You're what?" I set the bag down, folding my arms. "You said you were going on a date. That means you're done here, right? Thought I'd save you the trouble of coming back to pack." Her face twisted in confusion, then disbelief. "You're being ridiculous." "Am I?" I raised an eyebrow. "You left this house, telling your husband that you were going on a date. You expected me to what? Sit here and wait for you like a good little boy." She scoffed, stepping forward, trying to take control of the situation. "Wallace, come on. I was just being honest with you. Isn't honesty supposed to be a good thing in a marriage?" I laughed. Actually laughed. That threw her off. "Honesty," I repeated. "That's rich. You don't get to call this honesty. Honesty is telling someone the truth before you betray them, not after you've already made your decision." I pointed at the bag. "You checked out of this marriage a long time ago. I just didn't see it. But now I do." She hesitated. "I didn't say I wanted a divorce." "Oh, you don't get to control that either," I interrupted, shaking my head. "You lost that privilege the second you walked out that door." Her expression darkened. She didn't like this. She wasn't in charge of the script anymore. Where did you even go tonight? I asked. I didn't expect an honest answer, but I wanted to see her lie to my face. She hesitated just half a second too long. Out. With a friend. Right, I said. And does your friend happen to live on the other side of town in that nice little white house on Maple Avenue? Her entire body stiffened. I smiled. Yeah, I know. She swallowed, trying to recover. How do you know that? You're not as clever as you think you are, Renee. The room fell into silence. She wasn't smirking anymore. I could see the gears turning in her head, trying to figure out how to spin this, how to twist it back into something she could control. But she had already lost. I reached for the trash bag, lifted it, and held it out. So here's the deal. You're leaving. Right now. You can go back to Maple Avenue or wherever else you want, but you're not staying here. Her eyes widened in disbelief. You're kicking me out. That's exactly what I'm doing. She let out a sharp, humorless laugh. You can't be serious. I tilted my head. You thought you could humiliate me. You thought I would just take it. Did you really think I would still want to share a house with you after this? For the first time since she walked through that door, I saw something real in her expression. Not confidence. Not amusement. Panic. And that was the most satisfying feeling I had felt in a long time. Renee's laugh was short, sharp, but it didn't reach her eyes. She was still trying to keep control of the situation, to manipulate the pieces on the board like she always had. But the pieces weren't moving the way she expected. She had walked in here with a plan. Come home, act smug, maybe even throw in a fake apology if I seemed upset, just enough to keep me in line while she kept doing whatever she wanted. But she hadn't expected this. Her eyes flicked to the trash bag in my hands. Her clothes, her makeup, her shoes, all of it shoved into a garbage sack like discarded junk. You're overreacting, she finally said, her voice tight, forced. I told you I was going out. I was honest with you. Isn't that what you always wanted? Honesty. I let out a breath through my nose, shaking my head. You keep using that word like it means something in this situation. But honesty doesn't count if it's just another way to be cruel. I gestured at the door. And let's not pretend this was some innocent night out. We both know exactly where you went. Her jaw tensed, but she didn't deny it. That told me everything I needed to know. She wasn't even going to try to lie her way out of it. She had made her decision before she even walked out the door earlier tonight. She wasn't sorry. She never planned to be sorry. I dropped the trash bag by her feet. Take your stuff and go, Renee. Her eyes widened, and now I saw something new, realization. The full weight of what was happening. She had expected a fight, maybe even a dramatic argument where she could paint herself as the victim, something she could twist into a reason why her actions were somehow my fault. But I wasn't giving her that. I wasn't playing her game. I'm not leaving, she said finally, crossing her arms. This is my house too, Wallace. You can't just throw me out like some stray dog. I arched a brow, leaning against the doorway. Stray dogs are usually loyal. They don't wander off to another owner the second they get bored. Her face reddened. Screw you. I smiled. Already did. That's kind of the problem, isn't it? Her eyes flared, and for a brief moment, I thought she was going to lunge at me. But she took a sharp breath, smoothing her hands down the front of her dress, like she could physically force herself back into control. Fine, she said stiffly. If this is how you want to handle things, I'll go. But don't think for a second that this is over. I shrugged. It is for me. She grabbed the bag, yanking it up with more force than necessary, her knuckles white as she clutched the plastic. For a split second, she looked like she was going to say something else, one last attempt at regaining control. But instead, she turned on her heel and stormed out. I stood there, listening as the front door slammed shut. The sound echoed through the house, rattling against the walls, and for the first time all night, I exhaled. It was done. Or at least, I thought it was. I turned off the lights, walked upstairs, and sat on the edge of the bed. It felt strange, being alone in a house that had always been ours. There should have been sadness, maybe even regret. But all I felt was relief. I had spent years making excuses for her. Years convincing myself that the distance between us was temporary, that if I just tried a little harder, did a little more, she would come back to me. But the truth was, she had checked out of this marriage a long time ago. I had just been too blind to see it. I lay down, staring at the ceiling. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I could actually breathe. But that peace didn't last long. Because when I woke up the next morning, I had 12 missed calls from Renee. And a text message that made my blood run cold. You think this is over? Think again. The next morning, the weight of what had happened settled over me like a heavy fog. It wasn't the crushing devastation I would have expected. It wasn't sadness. It was something else, something quieter, colder. A realization. My marriage, as I had known it, was dead. Maybe it had been dead for a while, and I had just been too blind, too trusting, too damn loyal to see the rot beneath the surface. But now, there was no denying it. I sat up in bed, rubbing my hands over my face. The house was eerily silent. No sound of Renee in the shower. No clatter of her heels on the hardwood floor as she rushed around getting ready. No passive-aggressive remarks about how I always left my coffee cup too close to the edge of the counter. Just silence. I should have felt empty. But what I felt instead was clarity. Then I picked up my phone. 12 missed calls. Renee. And the text message. You think this is over? Think again. A slow exhale left my lips as I stared at the words on my screen. It wasn't over for her. Of course, it wasn't. I had taken away the control she thought she had. I had blindsided her by not reacting the way she expected. And now, she was scrambling. For the first time since this entire nightmare began, I wasn't scared of what she might do. I was ready. I took my time getting out of bed. I made coffee, sat down at the kitchen table, and let the morning sun filter through the blinds as I scrolled through my phone. The first thing I did? Blocked her number. Then I moved to our shared bank account. She hadn't touched it. Yet. But I wasn't stupid enough to think that meant I was safe. I spent the next hour closing every joint credit card, transferring my personal savings into an account she had no access to, and making sure that legally, she couldn't drain me dry before I even had a chance to file for divorce. Every click of my keyboard felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. Then I got to the part one had been dreading. The truth. Because it wasn't enough for me to know she had been lying. I needed proof. I pulled up my laptop, logged into the tracking app, and scrolled through her past locations. My stomach twisted as I saw just how frequent those trips to Maple Avenue had been. Not just last night. Not just last week. For months. She had been going to the same address over and over again. And suddenly, I needed to know who. A quick search gave me the name. Daniel Bowers. I didn't recognize it. But then again, why would I? She had been living an entirely different life, one I had never been a part of. I clicked on his social media. His profile was public, filled with smiling photos, a nice house, a car that cost more than most people made in a year. He was older than me, mid-40s maybe. A businessman, judging by the polished look, the carefully curated images of success. And then I saw it. A picture. From last month. Him, at a restaurant, sitting across from Renee. Her hand on his. I stared at the image for a long time, waiting for the expected wave of pain, of heartbreak. But it never came. Instead, all I felt was a bitter sense of confirmation. She had chosen this. And now, I was going to choose me. I stood up, stretching out the tension in my shoulders. I had wasted too much time thinking about her. Now, it was time to take action. But before I could even put my plan into motion, my phone rang. A new number. I hesitated, then answered. And the voice on the other end of the line made my blood go cold. Wallace? We need to talk. It's about Renee. I froze. The voice on the other end of the line was calm, deliberate, but I didn't recognize it. My grip tightened around the phone as I stood in the kitchen, my coffee growing cold on the table behind me. Who is this? I asked, my voice steady despite the sudden rush of adrenaline coursing through my veins. A brief pause. Then the man exhaled. My name is Alan. I think we need to meet in person. It's about Renee. My mind was already racing through possibilities. Was he some lawyer? A private investigator? Someone from her past that I didn't know about? Or worse, was he another one of her dates? I wasn't about to let some stranger dictate how I handled my life. I don't know who you are, Alan, but I'm not interested in playing any more games. If you've got something to say it now. Alan sighed. It's not that simple. Trust me, I wouldn't be calling you unless it was important. Meet me at Harper's Diner in an hour. I'll explain everything then. I hesitated. Every instinct screamed that this was a bad idea. But at the same time, curiosity gnawed at me. If this man knew something about Renee, something she didn't want me to know, then I needed to hear it. Fine, I said, already grabbing my jacket. 1 hour. Harper's Diner was a small, unassuming place on the outskirts of town. The kind of spot where truckers and night shift workers stopped for a cup of coffee and a plate of greasy eggs. I parked outside, scanning the lot for any unfamiliar cars. My mind was still working through the possibilities. Who was Alan? And why did he suddenly feel the need to reach out now? As I stepped inside, the scent of burnt coffee and sizzling bacon filled the air. It was nearly empty, save for a few regulars scattered in booths near the window. And then I saw him. A man in his early 50s, dressed in a neatly pressed button-down, his graying hair combed back. He looked like someone who had spent his entire life making calculated decisions, someone who was used to being in control. But there was something else in his eyes, something unsettled. He gestured to the seat across from him. Wallace, right? I slid into the booth, folding my arms. That's me. Start talking. Alan studied me for a moment before nodding. All right. First, let me be clear. I'm not here to cause trouble. I don't know you, and you don't know me. But we have one thing in common. I raised an eyebrow. And what's that? He exhaled slowly. Renee. The moment he said her name, my stomach twisted. What about her? Alan leaned forward, lowering his voice. She's been lying to both of us. And I think you deserve to know the truth. I forced a bitter laugh. Yeah, I figured that part out on my own. Thanks for the heads up. Alan shook his head. No, you don't get it. You know she's been cheating, but you don't know who she's been cheating with, or how long this has been going on. Something about the way he said it made my skin crawl. I already know about Daniel Bowers, I said, watching his reaction carefully. Alan's expression darkened. Daniel is just one of them. And trust me, he's the least of your worries. I felt the floor shift beneath me. What are you talking about? Alan ran a hand over his face, looking genuinely exhausted. Look, Wallace, I wish I didn't have to be the one telling you this. But I found out about Renee because I was seeing her too. A heavy silence settled between us. I stared at him, my brain refusing to process the words. You were what? Alan nodded, regret flickering across his face. It wasn't serious. At least, I didn't think it was. She told me she was in an open marriage, that you knew all about it. She made it seem like it was completely normal, that you were okay with it. My stomach churned. That's a damn lie. I know that now, Alan admitted. I started catching on to her inconsistencies a few weeks ago. She told me she worked late nights, but I checked her social media. She was out with other guys. When I confronted her, she got defensive, said I was overreacting. That's when I realized I wasn't the only one she was stringing along. So I did some digging. I clenched my fists under the table. How many? Alan's face tightened. At least 5 that I know of. The diner suddenly felt too small, the walls closing in around me. 5. 5 different men. While I had been sitting at home, trying to figure out where our marriage had gone wrong, Renee had been out collecting lovers like trophies. And then another thought struck me. If you knew all this, why tell me now? I asked. Alan hesitated. Because I overheard something last night that you need to know. And it's not good. My pulse quickened. What did she say? Alan leaned in, his voice dropping to barely a whisper. She's planning something, Wallace. Something that involves you. And trust me, you're not going to like it. I stared at Alan, my pulse pounding in my ears. This whole situation had already felt surreal, but now it had taken a turn into something darker, something far worse than I had imagined. Renee had already destroyed my trust, but hearing that she was planning something, that was a whole different level of betrayal. I leaned forward, keeping my voice even despite the storm raging inside me. What do you mean she's planning something? What exactly did you hear? Alan exhaled, glancing around the diner like he was making sure no one was listening. Then he lowered his voice. She doesn't think you're going to let go of this easily. She told someone on the phone last night that she needs to get ahead of this before you do. I frowned. Get ahead of what? He hesitated. Your finances. Your reputation. She's worried you'll come out of this looking like the victim, and she doesn't want that. So she's trying to flip the narrative before you have a chance to react. My grip tightened on the edge of the table. Flip the narrative how? Alan's face darkened. She's planning to paint you as the bad guy, Wallace. She told her friend she's going to start telling people you were controlling, that you were emotionally abusive, that you pushed her into finding happiness elsewhere. I let out a sharp, bitter laugh. That's rich. She's the one who cheated. She's the one who walked out the door and told me to my face she was going on a date. I know, Alan said grimly, but that's not how she's going to spin it. She's going to start feeding people a different version of the story. And worse, she's considering making legal moves to screw you over in the divorce before you even file. A cold chill ran down my spine. She's filing first? That's the plan, Alan confirmed. She wants to make it look like she's the one escaping a bad situation. She even mentioned getting a restraining order against you preemptively to make it seem like she's afraid of you. I felt like I had been punched in the gut. My marriage had already crumbled, but now? She wasn't just trying to move on, she was trying to ruin me. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The hum of the diner's old refrigerator filled the silence, along with the distant sound of someone flipping through a newspaper. My hands felt numb against the table. This was a woman I had loved, a woman I had built a life with. And now, she was treating me like an obstacle to be eliminated. I took a slow breath, trying to steady my thoughts. Did she say when she's planning to do all this? Alan shook his head. No, but if she's already talking about it, she's probably moving fast. If I were you, I'd get ahead of her first. I nodded, my mind already racing through possibilities. I appreciate you telling me this, I said finally. Alan looked down at his coffee. I know I don't have the right to ask for forgiveness. I was one of the idiots who believed her lies. But when I realized she was playing multiple men at once, I knew I had to warn you. I studied him. For all my anger, I could tell he was genuinely ashamed. And the truth was, he wasn't my enemy. Not anymore. Let's just say you did me a favor, I muttered, standing up. I was about to walk into this blindly, thinking she'd at least keep this civil. Now I know better. Alan nodded. Good luck, Wallace. And watch your back. By the time I got back home, my mind was made up. I wasn't going to sit around waiting for Renee to strike first. She wanted to get ahead of me? Fine. I'd make sure she had nothing to use against me. I started by calling a lawyer. A damn good one. I explained the situation, leaving out no details. The moment I mentioned that Renee was planning to twist the truth and frame me as abusive, his voice turned sharp. We need to move now, he said. Do you have any texts, emails, or proof that could contradict her claims? I thought about it. And then I remembered. The tracking app. The receipts. The text message she sent me after she left. You think this is over? Think again. I pulled it all together, sent it to my lawyer, and by the end of the day, I had filed for divorce first. Not only that, but my lawyer had taken steps to ensure Renee wouldn't be able to make false claims about me. A preemptive protection order filed against her before she could file one against me. Every financial move locked down. Every piece of evidence secured. By the time I was done, I finally felt like I was in control again. That night, as I sat in my house, the one she no longer had any claim to, I finally let myself breathe. Renee had thought she could manipulate this situation, thought she could rewrite the story and make me the villain. But I had flipped the script, and something told me she wasn't going to like that one bit. The morning after, everything felt strangely peaceful. I woke up without the usual weight pressing down on my chest, without the endless cycle of thoughts running through my mind. For the first time in years, I felt light, free. I took my time getting out of bed, letting the quiet settle around me. No rushing to fix things, no worrying about what was coming next. The uncertainty that had once terrified me now felt like an open door rather than a looming threat. I made coffee, sat at the kitchen table, and looked around the house. My house. It had once felt like a shared space, filled with memories I wasn't sure how to process. But now it felt like a fresh start. A blank slate. I picked up my phone, scrolling through messages. Friends who had reached out after hearing about the split, offering their support. People I hadn't spoken to in months, maybe even years, checking in. It was strange how endings had a way of reconnecting you with the things that truly mattered. Then, one message caught my attention. Wallace, I just wanted to say I'm sorry for how things turned out. I never expected this. I hope you find what makes you happy. It was from Renee. I stared at it for a moment, expecting to feel something. Anger, frustration, maybe even a little sadness. But there was nothing. Just acceptance. I thought about replying, about finding the right words. But then, I realized I didn't need to. Some things didn't need closure. Some things were better left as they were. Instead, I put my phone down, stood up, and walked to the door. I wasn't going to spend another day looking back. The world was waiting. And for the first time in a long time, I was ready to move forward.